Okay, the first step we're going to do is we take our paper, pattern paper, and we keep the fold there. Here it is. We've got enough paper. This one is 16 inches wide, so when it's open it's 30-inch wide, which should be sufficient for a shirt. Right, once you've taken the paper, you folded it, the first step is to make a straight line at the top, and I'll also draw it in marker so it's visible for everyone. This line will act as a guiding line to make sure that your pattern is aligned throughout, and we will label this from the fold. It will be point A, and on the open end it will be labelled point B. The next step we need to do is to make the neckline box. So 3 inches from the folding line, exactly from the folding line, and make sure the ruler is straight on the end. Some rulers have a little bit of a gap. You mark it on 3 inches and you label just a little dot. You label that point C. Then from point C downwards you measure exactly 6 inches. Do a little dot. Again, from the other side, from point A downwards, you measure exactly 6 inches, make a little dot. Now check that these two are also 3 inches. It was slightly out. And you label this point D and this point E. Now you join points, you just make a box. Joining all the points, join C to D and D to E. Now the next thing you need to do is take your, if you look at this diagram here, we need to make the shoulder slope. So for this we take the final readings. Remember when we did the calculations, we use the final measurements on your calculating sheet, and we take the shoulder measurement, which is 7.25, and from point A towards B we measure 7.25 and we label this point F. Right, so we've taken the shoulder measurement from here to here and we've labelled it as point F. Now from point F, measure exactly ½ an inch down, just do a little dot, and we label this point G. Now from point G to point C, we draw a straight line, and this is known as the shoulder slope. Now from point G, we need our armhole measurement. So when we did the armhole measurement and we came up with a final calculation, and this is our armhole measurement. So now from point G downwards I will measure 8.25 in a straight line. .25, and I will label this point H. And now I will draw a line. I'll keep this in pencil. You should be able to see it because we need to make some more lines. Draw it in marker. Now at the end of point H we need to make the chest line or bust line measurement. To make sure that it's straight, I will measure from point F to H, see how much that is, and that is 9, just below 9. So I'll take it across there and measure the same point here, and I will label that point I. From point I, exactly under joining line H, this way across, I will draw the chest measurement, which was the final measurement here, which was 9. And at the end here, I will label this point J. The next step is to measure. We took our shoulder to waist measurement, and this can vary between 14 to 16. So on this pattern it's 14. We make a little dot and we mark it point K, and now using our point A to B as a guiding line, we take the ruler across anywhere just as a guide, and we mark exactly the same anywhere, just do a little dot. Now using point K and the little dot as a guide, we measure across the waist measurement, the final waist measurement here, which is 7. And we label this point L. Right, now we have, we've marked up to the chest line and the waistline. With the next point we can do, and we can write on this as we go along. The next thing we need to do is take the shoulder to hip measurement to make the hip line, and here that is 22. So we measure from our guiding point at the top and we label that point M. And again, using the top guiding line, we measure anywhere across from the top. 22, we draw a dot just as a guiding point, and then so now you've taken your measurement from shoulder to hip and you've marked it point M, and then using the guiding line we've measured the same distance and drawn a little dot just anywhere as a guiding line on the same. So this was 22. It can be between 18 to 22. Everyone has a different body size. Now from point M this way, we measure, we take the final hip measurement, which is 11.5, and we draw a straight line and we measure this point N. And the next step is to take our overall shirt length measurement from the top, and this one is 34 inches. If your ruler isn't long enough, then use a tape measure. Mark a little dot and we label that point O. Then we do the same from the other side. We measure the length. Now from point O, I will measure across, and for a straight standard shirt without any flare or anything, in order to gather the bottom of the shirt width, we take the hip measurement divided by 4 and we add 1 inch. So the hips were 11.5, so this will be 12.5. And we draw a straight line. And we label this point P. Now the next step is making the armhole curve. And for this we have our measurement of our armhole. The first thing we do is we take the armhole measurement, which is 8.25, and we divide it by 2. So sometimes another good method is to take the tape measure and then divide it, just fold it and then mark along the line where the half comes. That's a good indication. And you take in only ½ an inch this way, and from H towards I, just check that is ½ an inch because I did the centimeter. So from H to I, point I, you only measure 3/4 of an inch, make a little mark, and you call that point Q. Then from point Q to G, you draw a straight line. Now from point Q, you measure 1 inch from the 90-degree angle towards 45 degrees, and you label that point R. And you do the same from point H, you measure 1 inch at a 45-degree angle, and you label that point S. Now for the next step, you need your French curve, and in a pencil I'm using marker so that it's clearly visible. So for the inner armhole, you join points G, R and J. So if you look, you take it from here and it needs to stay within this line, and you move your French curve, you move it, move it, move it, move it, and you have your curve, and you can smoothen it out by hand. And I'll just draw that in marker so it's clearly visible. Oops, just ignore that line. And you do exactly the same for the outer arm, starting from the top, but keeping on this line. Again, you just play around with the curve and you make a smooth line. And here you can just join the two and you just smoothen it out. And I'll just go over that with a marker pen. So you have the pink line, which is the inner curve, and the green line, which is your outer curve. The inner one is for your inner arm, which is slightly deeper, and the green one is for the back of your shirt, which is the outer arm. Right, the next step is to mark the, there's a tip. So between the waist and hip, sometimes if we draw a straight line here, sometimes if someone's slightly bigger in size, then the shirt may get stuck around here. This is optional, but just to give a little bit of ease, we add another hip line here, which I'll show you how to do. So from the waist, exactly from the waistline, we measure 3 inches down, just a little dot as a guide. And we draw another hip line, exactly the same, which was 11.5. And we label that point V to W. Now we take our ruler and we join all the points. This is why we use a pencil, just in case there's any mistakes. Just here, you can use a French curve, or you can just do a rough curve, just so it's not pointed. And again, the same here, you can either use the French curve or just to give a little bit of shape along the shirt. And the next step you do is you mark along exactly 1 inch for your seam allowance. If from the chest to the waist, some people from the chest to the hip, some people prefer to add 1.5 inch extra at the top, but it's down to preference, entirely up to you. For this pattern, I'm going to mark 1 inch. And if you can see, I take the ruler exactly 1 inch and I'm drawing a line all the way through from here just to all the way around, and this will be the seam allowance. So the inner line will be the seam allowance, and this will be the seam allowance, the inner line will be the fitted line. So we've done our fitting line and our seam allowance line, we've drawn that. Now the next thing we need to do is make our neckline. So some people prefer a shorter, deeper neckline, and some people prefer a smaller neckline. Now this is just a standard, this box does not mean that someone will have a 6 inch deep neckline, because remember, this is the shoulder. Necklines will make separately. Now if you look at this, for the back neckline we measure exactly 2.5 inches. If someone prefers a deeper neckline, they can make it slightly deeper, but I usually keep it 2.5. And you draw a straight line. We label this point T and U. Now we take our French curve, and from C to E, we draw a curve, just joining, not going out of this line. And from point C to T, we draw another curve, which is a back neckline. You can see I've cut around the seam allowance of the pattern, and now we're going to move to the next step. If you can see, I've cut the outer arm and we've cut the shoulder slope. Now the next step is to cut, you can lift the paper and only cut the back neckline. So this was from point A to T. That's all. You don't need to cut this. And now very carefully lift the paper and you cut along the inner arm hole, which is the pink line. That's it. You don't cut this paper in half. And now you label this front, and you can open up and write back. So if you can see, you have your front armhole and the back armhole, and this is your pattern complete.